of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte, State of California, is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate public and staff availability, and we will be doing that today because we will have a closed session. So I would like to, meeting here is now called to order. Ms. Commissioner Gastineau, would you please lead us in the pledge? And Karen, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson? Here. Commissioner Hawley?
Here.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Here.
And Chairman Gitlin.
And here. Thank you very much. And what we will do, we will be taking some items out of context, but let's open it up now at 3:30 for the public comments. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After the meeting recognition, receiving recognition from the chair, please give your name and address, city of course, city or county for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. So do we have public comments? Okay, Mr. Miles.
My name's Richard Miles. I'm a city resident, and I'm speaking as myself right now because I was scolded at our September the 8th meeting because I hold another position. I asked a question not too long ago as a private citizen at this meeting, and I've never seen any more discussion about that. This agency owns some acreage at the transfer station that isn't developed, not being used, and is worth some money. Mr. Sullivan and you, Mr. Gitlin, said that you people would bring that back. To date, I haven't seen that issue brought back. Another question that I have, and I brought this up at our meeting, and me and another gentleman still have some concerns about this. Over a year ago, Mary Wilson brought something that we worked over a year on, and that was a request to repeal a previous ordinance that was created by the previous solid waste task force by Clark Moore. To date, and I want to scold both the city and the county and this agency, you have not made one move to repeal those ordinances. That means, in my book, and maybe I'm a little pointed-headed over this issue, they're still enforced. To be enforced, if you're not going to repeal them, you got to fund it. And you haven't funded it, or you haven't repealed it. I'm sorry, but as a private citizen and not the chair of the Solid Waste Task Force, because I can wear 2 hats, shame on you.
Okay, do we have any additional public comments at this time? Seeing none, I will close public comments. Ted, can you look into the land issue we were discussing, Mr. Miles?
Yes, it is property the authority owns. Should we bring that onto a future agenda?
Let's put it on a future agenda. Let's discuss what the size of the property is and if there is any appraisal of value and see what it's used for, so this authority can discuss this. Okay.
Could I, sorry.
Comments,
Could I ask a question?
Commissioner
on that?
Sullivan.
Don't we already know the details of the property? Is it
I'm
3
not aware of
acres?
those details.
How many acres is it? 3 that's not being used?
It's approximately 3 acres.
So can we direct staff to ask 3 different real estate agents approximately? I mean, that can give a ballpark anyway, that's a starting point, and that doesn't cost anything, and bring those numbers back to the board.
Okay, if that's fine. I have no
I mean,
problem
we
with that,
want-
but we want to have a general good idea. So this is commercial property, so at least we have some brokers who are commercially familiar with this property rather
And
than
I'm just
some-
saying as a starting point, we need to start
Okay.
somewhere.
So
So we can always get
we'll
an
do that. It's a
appraisal
good
done if
start.
we actually choose to sell it,
Okay.
so.
Okay, that's been taken up. Any other comments from the board with regard to that or any other subject in regard to Mr. Miles' comments?
We did repeal the ordinances, Richard. It just hasn't gone to the city and county at this point.
And I think,
Okay.
I'd like to just say that the county attorney, or the city attorney, has been working on its relationship with the city ordinances, and we'll have resolution here pretty quick. So we have been working on it, just we haven't brought it back because there's been nothing to bring back in.
All right, thank you for the clarification. Now, we will be moving around this agenda a little bit because there is scheduled a closed session, and given the fact that many of our authority members have finite schedules, we'll be moving that toward the middle portion, the front portion of the meeting, the closed session, but we'll try to get some business done that is affected by those here in the audience who wish to speak on it. So closed session will take place mid-meeting. Let's hear a report at this time. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chair, if I could make a formal request, I'd even be willing to make an motion that for all future meetings, closed session be put at the beginning of the agenda, both for the county and city meetings. This is the status quo, as we have the closed session at the very beginning of the meeting. This is the only committee I belong to that has a closed session at the very end. So I would, in sticking with the format both the city council used and the board of supervisors, I would request that closed session for future agendas be done at the very beginning of the meeting.
All right, that's a purview of the chair. I don't think we need to have a motion on this, but I can schedule this as part of this. Now, I want to get a consensus from my colleagues here. Are you in favor of having a closed session scheduled at the beginning of the meeting?
I personally think that's a good idea. But I do think that we ought to allow for at least 15 minutes or a half hour for closed session so that those that want to participate in the regular meeting won't have to wait around for us. They know that we're going to be in closed session until 3:45 or something like that.
And Commissioner Sullivan, are you all right?
Well, yes,
if we do
will
the
we start maybe
exception?
at 3 o'clock?
Because we do have people here who are waiting.
I can't start at 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay. So why don't we, I guess, to make it more of a concrete part, start closed session at 3:15 and...
Well, again, these are schedules we're trying to, Ron, is your schedule 3:30?
I actually
3:30.
get out of class
Well,
at 3:10.
3:10.
I could be here.
Well, let's just say 3:30. I would still stay with, and I will make it a motion to stick it at 3:30, start closed session for a permanent part of the agenda going forward.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll have a motion, we have a second. Let's bring it to the public. Any comments from the public on having closed session at the beginning of the meeting, starting at 3:30? See no, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to board comments. Commissioners, any additional comments on having the meeting set
Clarification.
permanently? Clarification?
I do think it should be at least maybe a finite time of only 30 minutes of a closed session, and so the regular meeting would start at 4 o'clock. That way, the public knows that we will be coming out of public session at 4 o'clock regardless of what we accomplish there or not. If we have to do another closed session at the end of the meeting, we will do that.
So I'll amend the motion to say it's, 3:30 closed session, 4 o'clock open session, and if we have business, we can always bring it over at the end.
And of course, closed sessions are not a regular part of this governance. We have them rarely, but in this case, we do have one. So Ted, do you want to weigh in on this?
My only concern, based on experience, is that if we were to start our regular meetings at 4 o'clock, I know some of our commissioners are time constrained at 5, and it would be challenging to try to accomplish all of the regular work we do every month in just an hour.
I agree with that. So I'm going to, these are exigent circumstances. Keep in mind that our closed sessions are rare. We don't have them often. So and I would make this as a suggestion, Ted, that when we have a closed session, we prioritize, and we will do that ahead of time when we set the pre-agenda meeting for the chair or next year, whoever the chair may be, so that we have a shorter meeting than normally scheduled. And I think we have a motion, we have a second to make this at 3:30 with a duration of not to exceed a half an hour. At 4 o'clock, our regular meeting will start when we have a closed session, and then hopefully that agenda will be somewhat prioritized and abbreviated if we can do that.
Call the question, please.
Okay, let's take the vote.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
That would be yes. And of course, that would effectuate at any future, not for today. But we'll try to get into closed session as soon as possible. So let's move on to the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force. Discussion regarding meeting of 8 September 2014. That is you, Mr. Miles.
We had a very well-conducted meeting. Some of the items we discussed was we're going to send you people in the county a request for having 9 members instead of as many members that we currently have. We think we can have a better quorum by doing that than having too many members. As you may have noticed in Tuesday's newspaper, the county has announced for 3 members. The applications will be coming to us to review, and then we'll send our recommendations to the county for appointment and approval by the city. Otherwise, Ted, we're about 2/3 done with the review of the 2013 review of the 5-year plan that was submitted then to Cal Recycling. As I see it, we'll probably finish the review of that plan and educate ourselves by the September meeting, and then we'll move on as a group in October and November to finalize the 5-year plan and submit it to the county no later than the 1st of November. That's my goal. Otherwise, we had a very productive meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miles. Comments from the commissioners? Okay, we'll close that section. We're going to move on now to the general solid waste matters, and we're going to move to category 6, and we'll start with 6.1. Given the fact that we have people here who will be making a presentation, we'll get this section covered on. Let me correct that. Let's do consent agenda first. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second on consent agenda. Public comments on consent agenda items?
Mr. Chair, one small comment. Mr. Taylor highlighted that on the meeting of the 21st, he was in attendance, and so the draft minutes ready for signature have already made that correction.
Okay, thank you, Ted. So are there any comments on consent agenda items at this time?
On the minutes?
Yes, let's go to public comments first. And is there anyone from the public? And then we'll bring it back to the board. Commissioner Wilson. Is there any additional comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close that and bring it back to the board. Commissioner Wilson, you had a comment?
Yes, I would like to have a couple of words taken out of the minutes on the second page. About halfway down, it's
Excuse me, which minutes are you referring to?
the Thursday, August 21st,
Thank you.
the special meeting. And it's the large paragraph there. It's 2, 4, 6, 8. The 9th line there, where it says she added the staff report in the agenda, did not seem to tell the whole story. See that one?
I'm sorry, so which word would you like to correct?
I didn't use the word seem to. I just, that needs to be, did not tell the whole story.
Okay.
And then I saw a typo on the third page, where Ms. Rice's name is misspelled. I don't know, just a tiny thing. On page 3, and it's a third of the way down after, do you see it there? It's Commissioner Sullivan requested clarifications, which steps in option 2 applied, and then Ms. Ricey in there complied. It's just a little typo. That's all I saw. Did you see it there?
Okay, so noted those clerical corrections and also the deletion of the word seem, and just make it as a factual statement. Is that what you're referring to, Commissioner Wilson? Okay, so we can make those corrections accordingly. Board consensus on this? No problem. Okay, let's call the vote on consent agenda items 2.1, 2.2.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. All right, now we'll move on to the Chapter 6, and we're going to take this a little out of order so we can get people moving on their way. I see, Tamara, you're here on behalf of the Local Transportation Commission, so we're going to call 6.4, discussion and possible action regarding Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority Resolution 2014-15, 2014, I'm going to presume that's 2014-15, not 05. Is that, no, that's 05 is correct? All right, thank you. Endorsing safe STAA access on California US Highway 199 from US Highway 101 to Interstate 5. Tamara, thank you. And please identify yourself for the record.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Tamara Layton. I'm the Executive Director for the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission. This project has been a regional priority and has been widely supported by multiple public and private entities, including our local and state representatives. We have recently brought this topic back to our area representatives. To date, we have 100% yes votes in support of this project from the City of Crescent City, the County of Del Norte, the Chamber of Commerce, the Crescent City Harbor District, and the Del Norte County Unified School District, and I'm asking for 100% support from this board today. The project will replace a bridge that is in the top 1% of the oldest bridges on the state highway system, and it is the narrowest bridge on US Highway 199 at 7.6 meters. This is a difference of over 9 feet from the next to narrowest bridge on US Highway 199. The project also adds some maneuvering room, resulting in a more forgiving roadway for all drivers. It's interesting that the Stephen Memorial Bridge on South Fork Road will have 2 14-foot lanes and 1 foot 4-inch shoulders for a roadway that will be over 6.5 feet wider than the bridge on US Highway 199 right now. The Stephen Memorial Bridge is a bridge way up South Fork that is currently being replaced. So we're going back to our representatives to affirm support for the project. The Transportation Commission wants to continue to be clear that the community's representatives have been unwavering in their support. There's been some questions recently about other funding. There is no other money. There have been some reports that there is some special money for STAA access, and this is completely false. The State Transportation Improvement Program funds are designated to a region for use on the state highway system. If we lose this money, it will be gone from our region forever. Currently, we have a lawsuit brought on by Friends of Del Norte and Ted Souza and their colleagues, which has resulted in an injunction. The judge ruled there were discrepancies in the environmental document, not in the geotechnical analysis for the project. So, right now, we have $9.4 million of funding at risk. The total corridor of projects that are at risk are $33 million. If the Friends of Del Norte and others continue to litigate the project, it will further be delayed, and our funds will continue to be at risk of running out of time and thus running out of money because we have timely use of mandates. And this seems to be a strategy for some of these environmental groups to run transportation projects out of time because they know very well that we have timely use of funds mandates. So the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission is seeking intervenor status, and that's a legal status in court for when the project goes back to the courts, and this is why we need your unwavering support for this project to help us replace the bridge that was built in 1925 and to have some maneuvering room and a more forgiving highway for all drivers.
Thank you, Tamara. Board comments?
Just to add that we also have the healthcare district as unanimous support on that too, due to the safety issue and the healthcare issues that do rise.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I don't actually have those letters yet, so I'm reporting on what's in my office to date.
Right. Thank you, Tamara.
I'm in favor of this, but I'm probably used to it because I've driven the road so many times. Which bridge is it exactly?
This is the Middle Fork Smith River Bridge. It comes off a short corner, you go around the bridge, and then you go around another corner up the North Fork.
It's a different, it's almost like a Z or an S. When you hit the thing, you go like that, and it's not a very long bridge, but it's at a weird angle. Yeah.
No,
this is on 199.
It's on Highway 199.
Now, do you have a mile marker?
Excuse me.
A mile marker?
I'm
No.
thinking 26, but
Okay.
I can send a photo of the bridge. When you see the photo of the bridge, you'll go, oh, that's it. Because
There are a number of bridges on 199, and we just want to make sure we're identifying them.
Yeah, this is the one that's 9 feet narrower than any other bridge on Highway 199.
I'm probably used to it, but yeah, that doesn't sound good.
Okay, Tamara, thank you very much, and we're going to open up to public comments on this agendized item, and weigh in on the public, and we'll go from, okay, Mr. Les, there are some other folks here, because Richard, you were just there, let's have Wes come up, and then Richard, and then we don't need to have a sign-up sheet. Andy, do you wish to speak on this too? Okay, Wes, go ahead.
Yeah. Wes White with Hambro WSG. I want to address the issue not from an STAA standpoint, but strictly from the standpoint of safety of the trucks we're currently running. I also am here as spokesman for South Coast Lumber, for Curry Transfer, and for Bettendorf Trucking. Bettendorf Trucking runs garbage from Humboldt County through that canyon every day. We run garbage through that canyon every day, as does Curry Transfer. South Coast Lumber also runs trucks through there, and in total we comprise about 185 trucks through that canyon a week. So we all heartily endorse this, and will encourage your support on this. South Coast Lumber could also benefit, as well as what I believe this community could benefit by the endorsement of you folks, because of the economic factor that is involved in the lack of competitiveness in the trucks that come into this region. Because we're restricted in length, the number of trucks that are available to this community, such as the lily bulb farmers and agricultural, and other, actually the lumber company too, up in Brookings, is restricted. So if you think about a 45-foot truck versus an STAA regulated truck, guys aren't coming over here, so the rate is higher just out of because there's less availability of trucks. So again, I'd encourage you, and I know South Coast Lumber is hardly behind it, as is Curry Transfer and Bettendorf Trucking. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wes. Let's have Richard up for comment.
I support fixing this highway because I think it's important to the economy of the North Coast. But the question I really have, and this is after I think Ambrose at one time had one of our Congress people ride up on that road and she was kind of scared, is what is the contingency plans of this organization? Because I want to remind you that one time when Renner's trucks didn't make a curve and it spilled diesel into the Smith River. I want to know what your contingency plans with the other agencies in this county to deal with a garbage spill in the Smith if one occurred, because this bridge is only one of the many bad spots on that highway.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Any other public comments? Please approach.
Janet Gilbert, I'm a county resident. All people have a right to flourish. It is the basic right. It is the basis for our laws. It is the basis for a civilized society. To flourish, we need a clean environment, clean water, clean air, healthy food. We recognize if we are to flourish, then the environment must also flourish. We write laws to clean up our atmosphere, our bodies of water, our land. We authorize the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. We mandate proper waste stream removal, recycling. We write these laws. We need a healthy ecosystem. We need a robust planet if we are to flourish. The proponents of the 199 and the 197 road enhancements see these roads as improvements, as an economic asset to the community. Well, we've just heard several people speak to that. It would be beneficial. The opponents to the 199, 197 see a substantial risk to the right to flourish. A diesel spill in the Smith River, a devastation to the aquatic life and the livelihoods who depend on the aquatic life, a devastation to our drinking water, more and more larger trucks resulting in more traffic accidents, more noise, more air pollution, more risk to our health. Whose argument has the greater validity? I side with the people's right to flourish as a healthy community. Our governments and our agencies exist to sustain our communities in this country, human communities, natural communities, and the interface between. And this is a decision that is a tough one to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments at this time on item number 6.4? This is endorsing the safe STAA access on California U.S. Highway 199 from U.S. Highway 101 to Interstate 5. Sir, please.
Hi, my name is Rob Miller from Smith River, and I think it's important. I've read a lot of news articles in the newspaper, letters to the editor, seen a lot of the meetings and so forth, and there's an awful lot of misinformation about what trucks actually are going to start to come. There's a law in the state of California that says that the maximum amount of weight on a truck is 80,000 pounds. Doesn't make any difference whether the truck is 40 feet long or 400 feet long. So the rumors about super heavy and so forth is not true. It's It's not possible. It's against the law. The length of the truck can be increased under STA rules, but back when they signed the law, there were no sliding axles. I have a truck in my yard right now which is 70 feet long, and it's not legal to go up and down 199. Has to go north on 101. Has sliding axles. When the sliding axles are slid forward, it is today a shorter wheelbase, better turning radiuses and so forth than a legal truck based upon bumper-to-bumper measurements. This is the 21st century, and we really do need to remember that, sure, there's going to be some longer trucks. They will not be heavier. The road needs to be widened a little bit. It needs to be fixed. The economic viability in Delaware County is important to us all. Some jobs might be important someday in this county. Otherwise, it's going to continue to deteriorate, and I think it's really important that we fix the road accordingly. Hey, there's going to be better RV access, all that kind of stuff. The economic viability in the county will be improved when that road is improved.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Additional comments? Thank you for your comments. And additional comments? Supervisor-elect, identify yourself.
Chris Howard, representing Alexander Dairy here today. You've heard many of these arguments. They've been in the paper. They've been long time supported by every agency here in this county. We're here today to make sure every agency continues to reaffirm their support. I do want to address one issue, and it's addressing an issue of my past, something I'm very familiar with, and that's the biology and the argument behind the biology, specifically CEQA, and the consultation between NMFS and Caltrans. They've argued that the coho salmon will be impacted by these projects, specifically because of threat or increase to sediment. We all know the coho salmon, this Smith River is a refugia for coho salmon. They have very strong populations here. Specifically when in regards to sediment, the Smith River Basin in particular, a very coarse sediment structure. That coarse sediment structure, when it breaks down, it goes into the river as large cobbles. Now we all look back and we go, hey, that Smith River clears really quickly during large storm events. It goes from brown to green in a day. You go down to the Eel River, you go down to Klamath, it stays brown, it stays brown, it stays brown. It's because the fine sediment stays suspended in the rivers. This coarse sediment that comes in is coming in and falling out and staying on the river bottom, not impacting the fishery, in this case, the spawning gravels for these coho salmon. That's extremely important in this case. We're considering impacts to spawning gravels of coho salmon from the infiltration of fine sediments off these projects, potentially. Although there are mitigation measures designed in these projects to prevent this from occurring. Here's the other point of consideration that nobody seems to be talking about. Do coho salmon spawn in the main stem Smith River? They do not. And I know this because I studied them for 17 years in this basin. They do not spawn in the main stem because the gravel size and particulate size that they need to spawn in, and the creek size and the refugia those creeks offer is not there for them. It's just too large. You go diving for them in there, you're not going to find them. Now it provides great habitat during the summer when those waters reduce and there's velocity refuge for them, but during the winter, it's not there. They're not going to spawn. People need to recognize when we're going to fight a battle over a species, and if it's a true endangered species, not necessarily in this basin, but otherwhere, that we need to fight the right fight. And this is not the case to fight for coho salmon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional comments? Please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Kevin Hartwick. Today, I represent the Council of Economic Advisors. I will be brief. The comprehensive economic development strategy that was derived was titled has199.com. Prior to any debate over this particular project, the harbor, the airport, the sewer, development of 199 as an adequate transportation source, and broadband were all considered as key to the economic development and the continuous creation of jobs in this community. It was done a long time ago. It still remains today that was adopted and still remains a core part of how our future economy is going to develop. We need adequate transportation system. This project falls along with something that's already been adopted by many boards before, including the tri-agency supported by the core government agencies in this community. That remains in place. It has not changed. It's not wavering. We have had great success by the various entities represented here and other places, developing the harbor, The airport is well underway. The sewer system has been completed. 199 has shown great promise, and the broadband system has shown its redundancy. I encourage you today to continue to stay the course on the project, which was named many years ago as a core project, the development and safety of 199, to allow commerce to continue in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hartwick, and we are asking for any additional public comments at this time. Seeing none, we will close public comments and bring it back to the commissioners for additional discussion, and I will entertain a motion at this time to approve.
Well, I did want to include one thing. There has been a ton of misinformation on this thing. The judge did not halt the project right now based on trucks. And by the way, there are 65-foot trucks, which are legal, that are going on 199 right now. We're not going to bring 65-foot trucks in because they're already here. That's the reality of, to truck our goods in and out, we have to have that. That's just so you can buy goods at the grocery store. And all the other different retail stuff that is here, you have to have that. So 65-foot trucks are on that road right now. These projects would make it safer for those trucks to come over, as well as RVs or anyone else on that highway. Unfortunately, it's this coho salmon thing has been an abuse of the Endangered Species Act. As Mr. Howard said earlier, it's the coho salmon in that particular part of the river is not the issue. And I've been told by a member of the Friends of Del Norte, this was their technique this is the only legal standing they had, was to challenge based on the coho salmon. Had nothing to do with trucks. The judge did not feel that was a valid point at all. So unfortunately, there keeps being this picture painted of the world being flat. The world is not flat, the world's round. So let's not jump to conclusion that the zombie apocalypse is going to happen once this road gets fixed. It's not true. It's preying on people's fears, and it's not accurate. So I would make a motion that we accept this resolution.
A motion is made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, a motion and second. And I would ask the other commissioners to weigh in on any particular comment before we call the vote. Did you have a comment you wish to make?
It's very brief. Two of us sit on the Transportation Commission, and we've been considering this for many, many years. And I think 10 years at least, and we're looking at a project that may be a loss of $35 million, 32 to 35, $33 million. I was close. So to lose that project would not be beneficial at all. And I'm really interested in the safety for the people of Del Norte going to Medford. And I think our resolution is very well written. It speaks to this being the other alternative route in the event we lose last chance grade. And we know we're all concerned about last chance grade. So imagine losing both routes and having to go way up north. It would basically make us an island. And that's unacceptable. So based upon discussions we've all heard before, I'm going to be voting yes.
Or down south and taking 299 across as another unacceptable.
If last chance grade goes, there is no 299.
Yeah, that's true. So we have, I'm not sure if we're talking about STA and 199 or 299, but it all has a lot of challenges. Commissioner Wilson, did you have anything you wish to say before we call the vote?
Nope, I'm
Okay, and again, I'm going to say what's apparently obvious to me. We have a troubled road. 199 is a troubled road. You could still have garbage trucks overturning on some of these narrow spots along that road, and it would wreak havoc. So clearly, getting the matter fixed would, in my ever-to-be humble opinion, minimize the risk of an accident or the repercussions as a result of an unfortunate accident. So I would support that. So let's call the vote and move on. Karen, if you would.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes?
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. And Commissioner Sullivan, would you care to read the resolution as it appears? Okay.
Resolution number 2014-05, endorsing safe STAA access of California U.S. Highway 199 from U.S. Highway 101 to Interstate 5. Whereas the 197-199 corridor, California State Route 197 and U.S. Highway 199 is the sole interregional and interstate route linking Highway 101 to Interstate 5 at Crescent City, California. And whereas the current alignment and fiscal constraints have restricted common truck access based on the 1982 Surface Transportation Assistance Act, STAA, route designation standards. And whereas the 199 corridor is the Del Norte and Border Coast region's only reasonable access to Interstate 5, which is a major interstate route that holds considerable interregional importance to Northern California and Southern Oregon, and is key to the safety and economic vitality of Del Norte County. And whereas the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority depends on the 199 corridor for the movement of solid waste and other commodities, and whereas the only alternate route for entering or leaving the region is US Highway 101, that is threatened by a significant and active landslide at Last Chance Grade to the south of Crescent City. And whereas Del Norte County past, present, and future allocations of state transportation funding sources have been dedicated to the 199 Safe STAA Access Project. The project includes replacing a functionally obsolete bridge that was built in 1925 and is in the top 1% of the oldest bridges on the state highway system. And whereas a lawsuit and court-ordered injunction now threatens the project and the community's investment in it, now therefore be it resolved that the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority does officially endorse and support safe STAA access, route access on 199 corridor from US Highway 101 to Interstate 5 in Del Norte County, California.
Passed unanimously June 10th, 2014.
September
Okay.
10th.
I'm sorry, did I say June? September. September 10th, 2014. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We will move on. And I see we have Environmental Health here, Department. Are you addressing a particular item? I'm trying to be considerate of everyone's time.
Yes.
And we'll
In
hear...
response to your email and phone call, this is the...
Okay, this is the flares incident?
Yes, expired flares. We have
Yes,
prepared-
okay. I do want to take that, that's 5.1. It's 4 o'clock now. I'm going to ask you to come back after our closed session when we will be bringing that up. Will you be able to do that?
I have an appointment at 5 o'clock, sure.
You do.
I have to be out.
All right, let's take it up right now, 5.1. At this point, again, we're moving out of order because I'm trying to be considerate of the people's time. And this is a discussion and possible action regarding management of expired marine flares in Del Norte County. Mr. Ward, if you would please give us some background, and then we have Environmental Health, and you'll address the issue.
Sure. In general, the expired marine flares are valid for 3 years, according to the Coast Guard. After 3 years, then they're supposed to be replaced. Unfortunately, in issuing this rule, there was no check to make sure what is the proper disposal method for these flares once they're expired. So I did a little investigation to see what our options are, and the short of it is the most appropriate option that through the Solid Waste Authority's programs would be that commercial businesses with marine flares would call for an appointment and bring those in as part of the hazardous waste collection event on the Friday, October 3rd. But they need to have an EPA ID number and they need to call for an appointment ahead of time. Now the caveat I'll add to that is that generally we do not receive explosives or radioactive materials or controlled substances during our hazardous waste collection events. I've checked with our contractor, which is Clean Harbors, and they do have an ability to handle marine flares as explosives, but unfortunately, in order to properly manage those materials, they need to be shipped to Colfax, Louisiana in a special truck. And the bottom line is that in order to provide that service, the first flare will cost about $9,500. So that is essentially a set cost. And were we to bring in 400 flares, for example, it would still cost about $9,500, and the individual businesses would be paying approximately $25 a flare. If we only had 200 flares, it would be about $50 a flare. So just in terms of the cost analysis, it doesn't look like it will be a very attractive program to the businesses that have these flares. So it seems to be a circumstance where we have programs available, but I'm not sure they're very attractive to the businesses that might have these materials.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Let's have Environmental Health approach now.
I'll make this quick.
Thank you.
A little bit of background on it. This wasn't an issue. I talked with Bev Knoll about 2 years ago. She's Coast Guard auxiliary, and they were using them in training, and that's how they used them. But they get old, and apparently there is a Coast Guard regulation. They can't use it. They do simulated now, so they can't use the expired flare, so they just pile up. Here's the issues. One, they're an explosive. They're a 1.4. They won't have a great blast damage, but they're still an explosive. The second one, which came up recently, is the perchlorate, which had not been of concern until it showed up in waters, groundwater Henderson, Nevada, which manufactures rocket fuel. And they were also a concomitant cluster of thyroid cancers and hyperthyroidism. Now they have come up with the research that says that the perchlorate ion, which we never thought was scary, mimics iodine. And iodine is the only human use of iodine is with the thyroid. And it forms a perchlorate organic compound that mimics thyroxine and causes thyroid disease and cancer. And so it's a priority pollutant now, so you can't put it in the water. I got some stuff here that I'm trying to find a solution, and several states and provinces are worried about this because it costs so much to dispose of. Nova Scotia, British Columbia, both seacoast. New Jersey has a temporary solution for it, and even then, only Ocean County will take it. They're trying to make it statewide. We have 3 counties in California that will take them, but only for their own residents. And they're fairly large counties, Los Angeles, Alameda. And some big cities can send them through the bomb squad because they are an explosive. We don't have a bomb squad. Some people say, well, 4th of July, just shoot them off. Well, the Coast Guard says that these are distress flares and that it's a crime to shoot them because they will come out, they will respond to these. And then you're going to end up in court for doing it. So the easiest solutions aren't there anymore. You can't put them in the water, you can't shoot them off at 4th of July. The Coast Guard Auxiliary can no longer use them. I did talk to Ted about that solution, and it is awfully expensive. I don't know what the answer is, but because of the 2 horns of the dilemma here, one is explosive, which we could probably handle, but then the priority pollutant, another issue. This stuff will go as hazardous waste if it's just a solution of perchlorate. So either way, and I got some other notes here that is probably not apropos for our county, but there is a chain of marine supply stores called West Marine. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're up and down the West Coast. At least in the state of Washington, West Marine, under product stewardship, will take the used flares. And the flares they guarantee them. They have a use-by date of 42 months. The Coast Guard says 36 months is theirs. Some, they may last longer, but you don't really want to be storing old explosives, no matter on your boat or at home. There is an issue, and there is a concern here. And I don't have the solution except the solution that Ted mentions. And we're not alone in this. Everybody's tearing their hair out because of that fact.
Thank you very much for those unfortunately sobering comments, but I'm going to bring it back to our public comment first. Okay, well, let's go to public comment first, and then we'll bring it back here. And also, I want to relate some conversation I had with our sheriff about this. So, go ahead, Wes.
Wes White, and I'm speaking as a harbor commissioner. My concern is twofold. Number one is the cost of these flares being disposed of at $25 a flare. I think I have, if we had that many flares, my sense is there's going to be a lot of flares going overboard, and I think that's what's happening to them now. Right now, there has been a possibility to shoot them off as long as it is not prior to 10-year expiration period. To give you an idea of the scope of the problem, it's been estimated there's over 1,000 flares sitting there that are over 10 years old. So we really need to consider the impact of these flares going into the ocean and the waterways and things like that. So that's a concern of mine, because at $25 a flare, my sense is we aren't going to get very many people. It's a statewide problem, so we're not alone. Maybe, I don't know how we address it, but anyway, I just wanted to get you an idea of the scope of the problem, what's going to happen, in my opinion, to the flares. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Any other public comments on this issue? Public comments? Seeing none, we'll close it, bring it back to our Commissioners, for comment?
Yeah, Wes, that was 1,000 that are just here in Delaware County, you think about? Over 10 years old. Well, I mean, that would bring our cost per flare down if we voted to do this. But as the years go on, there won't be as many to come in, and the cost for disposing of the flares will be going up. Because, you know, probably after the, you know, getting the bulk of them taken care of, then you only maybe have about, you know, 30 or 40, you know, the next year as they go through. This is one of those dilemmas where, you know, we have to take care of the problem here locally, but it's one of those things where big government comes in and tells the manufacturer that you have to take back your product like they do with computers and stuff like that. You know, we have the arsenic and everything like that. But, you know, that's pie in the sky stuff that the state legislature, the feds have to do. So for us to do that, it is going to be an expense. And for our community to keep these out of our waters, it might be something that we have to do right now, at least to get the problem, the bigger picture of it, having these thousands of explosives out in our community. So it's, yeah, not an easy problem to take care of, but we should take care of it locally if we can.
Other commissioners? Any other comments?
Yeah, I know that we're not participating as much with state initiatives and anything like that, but it does seem like an ideal situation for product stewardship, much like the carpets and the other things that we do. Those that are selling those flares need to contribute to their disposal.
We are still members of the California Product Stewardship Council, and we certainly could send them a letter to ask them about the status of this, because I know other coastal communities face the same issue. But I also concur with the board discussion that at this point, it's not an obvious solution until there's more legislative action, because there is such a disposal challenge and such a high cost for proper disposal at this point.
And my comment, are there any other commissioners? Commissioner Sullivan, did you wish to opine on this?
Well, I noticed in the staff report you had Brett Whitener with Humboldt County's, or Humboldt Waste Management Authority said this works out 20. Are they actively doing that?
They have done that in the past, yes.
So is there a way that that we could coordinate with them actually and possibly lower both counties' costs?
Based on our conversation with Brent, it looks like $25 a flare is about as low as it gets, because after a certain point you need to have the additional trucks and you're incurring those set expenses once again. Because it's mostly about transporting it to Louisiana for proper disposal. That's really where the bulk of the cost is, and a special truck for handling explosives.
You know, my comments on this are, it's not a case of if. These are marine flares, and I have no doubt in my mind that these marine flares are being dumped into the Pacific at some either a limited or a more expansive basis. And so it's a form of pollution. And I know you want to say it, let me just make my point, that I think this is the net result of when we don't have a solution. People find their own solutions, and it gets dumped into that big drink of water to the west of us, and no one knows, and no one's the wiser. So without saying factually that's happened, I think one can pretty much deduce that is in fact happening. Now, I had a conversation with the sheriff today, and he seemed to indicate, and I want to confirm this with our the state fire marshal on this, that prior to expiration, or even after expiration, these flares can be safely taken care of by the consumer. In other words, they can be burned in an open area, and maybe we should be looking at that. And then once it's trash, then it simply is disposed of in an appropriate manner. But while it's an explosive, and I use that word explosive in a minimal sense, that we ought to look at how we can deal with this problem on a local basis and have some kind involve our sheriff and our fire marshal, fire department, Cal Fire perhaps, in helping us dispose of this in a sane manner, so that we don't have people dumping these things into the Pacific. Now, I think my position is I'd like to get some more information on this. I'd like to contact our state fire marshal to see about the proper disposal of this. And I'd also like to see if we can move this conversation and involve other parties such as, again, state level, and even our congressmen, since it seems to be a federal problem. It's a national problem, and how we can deal with it. Clearly, we're at the end of the cat's tail here, and we have the problems, but every other area does too. So I think I would entertain a motion to table this until we have further information, and then giving you, Ted, the instruction to make some inquiries through our state fire marshal and our congressional delegation of our congressman to see what is the proper way to dispose of this ordinance. And I use the word ordinance as a not ordinance, but ordinance, so everybody's understanding what that word means.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
might,
go ahead.
maybe your recommendation might be for you to meet with, you as chair of the solid waste, meet with the Harbor Commission as well as with the sheriff in a group meeting.
Yep.
To start a game plan from there.
We could do that, but at this point, I would say,
environmental health.
yeah, I'm going to recognize you in a second.
Quick comment.
Okay, come on.
Okay, just so people are aware of this, perchlorate, once it burns, it's harmless. It's chloride. While it's perchlorate, it mimics iodine. Iodine's a very rare element. There's like a parts per billion in the ocean, but it gets into fish. We get our iodine from it. It doesn't take much perchlorate to screw things up. It's like mercury. Mercury's a rare metal, but as we know, it's finding our way into fish. You're not supposed to eat fish from the Delta anymore. Perchlorate is on that nature. Once they're burned, and that's a good solution, if we can burn them, it's not a problem, because chloride's not a problem. Perchlorate is a chlorine atom surrounded by 4 oxygens, and it's the same size as an iodine atom, and our bodies can't tell the difference, nor can the fish. I just wanted to at least make it clear that this is a little tiny thing that can do big damage.
All right, this is a good point, and again, I can see that this matter is being quietly dealt with by being dumped in the ocean. I can't prove
You're
that
right.
at this point,
You're probably
but
correct.
the observation is noted that this is probably what's happening, and that's not healthy for our fish. It's not healthy for our ocean. And the fact that we live so close to a wide body of ocean, and these are marine flares, I can see this thing becoming quietly just dealt with and not above board. So I am going to make arrangements. Ted, if you would coordinate with our local fire people here and Mr. White to meet and to discuss this thing. So, and as Commissioner Sullivan says, develop a game plan. And at this point, I think we'll put this on. No action will be taken at this point. Okay? So let us. Are there any additional board comments,
Yes.
Commissioner Howie?
Might I suggest, too, that simultaneous to those meetings, you check with the Stewardship Council and see if they've tried something or if they'd be willing to carry that through, so we can at least plant a seed to get this taken care of.
Yes. And I might add that those meetings will happen after our hazardous waste collection event. So I will inform the harbor that still, at this point in time, the best thing to do for folks with marine flares is to call for an appointment for October 3rd.
And that date again is October 3rd. So if someone brings this ordinance to you to dispose of, you're going to hand it back to them, is my understanding.
On October 4th, which is the general hazardous waste collection event for households from 9 to 2 at the transfer station, we do not accept explosive materials. So if somebody brings in any kind of explosive, but we do not accept them, we don't accept radioactive materials, we don't accept controlled substances.
Okay, we have instructions on how to proceed on this, and we will. So thank you, Environmental Health, for coming by, and we'll move on. 5.1, we'll take action. Please post it for the next agenda, Ted, and we'll go from there. Let's move on to 6 again, and we've done 6.4, and we're going to move now to 6.1, discussion and possible action regarding the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority work plan for 14-15. Go ahead. Okay, well, let me defer to my colleagues. We do have a closed session, and we do have important items here, including the R3 report on 6.2. I'm going to go to my colleagues now. Would you rather go into closed session now, or would you rather discuss these items in 6.2 and 6.3, which are somewhat related?
I would prefer to go in closed session.
Okay, is that a consensus? Okay, we will interrupt the meeting for a short period of time. We'll try to be back directly. We will now move into closed session. Thank you. is working. Council Rice, anything to report from closed session?
No action taken, but in the interest of time, we are going to continue this item to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
And the next regularly scheduled meeting, I'll take it at this time, because we have people who we're trying to maneuver schedules. I'll call that meeting for October 1st, which is a Wednesday, rather than October the 8th, which is the second Wednesday. Is there a consensus on the authority that October 1st will work for you? Go ahead.
Still during my approved vacation, I will not be able to produce an agenda.
Okay, so now we need to find a date. At this time, we might as well do this right now,
You want to do the 15th?
which would be the Thursday.
Well, we could do the 15th would be the,
Okay, October the 15th, which is the third Wednesday of the month. Ted, is that okay for you? Okay, so let's change that date at this point, October 13th.
I have a Redwood Transit Authority meeting.
Okay, so do I. So
3:30.
I think under the circumstances, if you can make this meeting, I'll join you. Okay.
is there a conflict with the 2nd of October, then that Thursday then? I guess
Okay,
jumping back.
October 2nd is still in your leave time, Ted? No, I'm just asking you. So let's make it October the 15th. I'm also on that committee, Ron, on the Redwood Council and the Redwood Transit Authority, and we'll see if we can change that date. I'll let them know accordingly. I'm not sure, are you the chairman on that?
No.
Okay.
It's a house of cards, house of cards, or
Okay,
dominoes.
so let's move on. It will be at the 3:30 designated time, and we will start with a closed session item first on there. That would be for October, is that the 1st or I'm sorry?
15th.
The 15th. Okay. If the meeting room is not available at the time in question, Redwood Transit Authority, we'll have to find a mutually convenient date. Can you call upstairs real quickly?
Sure, it's past 5.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, those meetings are scheduled for here, so they'd probably have this already find out.
All right, do we have any other alternatives other than the 15th? Can we, the 14th, of course, you're not here, Commissioner Sullivan, so the 15th is a Thursday, and let's see if we can...
No, I'm here the 14th. I am
You're
here the 14th. That's the week
Okay,
before.
so either 10:14 or 10:15 would work for everyone here on this board?
No.
No.
Visitors Bureau meeting on the 14th. 16th is open.
Which is a what, Friday?
Thursday.
10:16?
And that, well, sorry, the 16th I won't be here.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm leaving on the 16th also, so that's
It's
out.
National Bosses Day.
And again, and Commissioner Gastineau, without going too much in detail, Visitors Bureau meeting, I too am on that board. All right, do you have a problem with missing that meeting?
No, I don't have a problem.
Okay, all right, so I think we have a consensus. Getting 5 people together under one roof is sometimes challenging, and we are looking at the 15th, or the 14th, or the 15th.
14th.
Okay, I'm hearing the 14th or the 15th, wherever the room is available, Karen. Okay, so I'm hearing for possibility of a Redwood Transit meeting on one of those days, so we would, as soon as we have that information, we'll go from there. So it's either 10:14 or 10:15, and then we'll go from there. So please be flexible, okay? All right, now, let us move on, and I think we've moved through, I think at this point, I'm going to move back to the
3-1.
6s. I'm sorry. All right, we're open. Is Mr. Taylor still here? He's left. I was going to try to do the treasurer's report, so he did have to leave. All right, so let's go back, and we will look at, we've done 6.1. Refresh my memory on this, I think.
No.
Okay, let's go 6.1. Ted, if you would, please.
Yes, sir. In your agenda packet, you have a slightly revised version of the work priorities for fiscal year 2014 and 15, and per Commissioner Wilson's request, I've added an icon indicating those circumstances where we are complying with state or federal law, either through an authority-adopted plan, contract, or grant. And so there are additional icons to indicate those. I'd not separated them out completely because it would have disrupted the organization of things into transfer station facilities, operations, landfill closure, post-closure maintenance. Those still seem to be coherent ways to group these activities. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
Yeah, can we get rid of the stars here? You already had it listed as it's in the title, mandated or obligatory ongoing or future activities. All of these stars should be taken out. The black circled stars, it seems redundant and it confuses what the work plan is. Additionally, if they are ongoing activities, they're on here. I'm going to assume they're ongoing if they're on the work plan, on the key. Okay, so I don't know if we need the hand pointing, which shows ongoing activities. I don't think we need the circled star because you've already got that in the title, is mandated or ongoing. In fact, you have both titles so if I read the work plan, I don't need these symbols because you already have it in the title.
Okay.
So I would pull that out. Let's see. Yeah, I would take both stars out, actually, because if it's an ongoing activity, it's an ongoing activity. Otherwise, we could add a line at the end saying completed activities. But I know the legend's there to make it simpler, but it doesn't. It confuses the issue.
Okay.
So let's make this as simple as possible. You got it in the title already. In fact, there could be another section at the end saying activity completed for fiscal year 2013-14 as a separate paragraph because it's not an ongoing activity. But I think the legend actually confuses what the authority is actually doing.
Okay.
Any other board comments before we move on to public comments on item 6.1?
I believe that we had taken off, I went back to some prior work priority lists, and I thought that on the second page, the very last item under 1, where it's got the question and the circle with the cross through it, that we weren't going to do that at all at this point.
Well, that's exactly what it says, pending, deferred at present. We're not doing it.
So it's been deferred.
It's been deferred, but it's still on the list in that my understanding, based on the previous board discussion, was that if there comes a time when Hambro Waste Solutions Group stops providing public scale services, that the board is interested in having the authority provide those services as we do have a truck scale. And so it's kind of on the list. I've got a file. We've done work on it. But there is currently no activity on that, and we certainly will not move forward unless there's a need in the community for public scales.
So I think going back to separating things out, I would ask that we just put it as a wish list because these are not mandated things. I mean, there's 3 categories, and I think somebody else mentioned it. There's a to-do mandatory thing. There's a want things we want to have, and third is a wish list.
The dream list.
The dream list, and let's put these off on the wish list, and that way it can separate from this is our actual working priorities for this year that we're doing, and then make the wish list a separate thing. We can include it at the very end, but we want to make this as simple as possible, and I think sometimes this thing has been more complicated than it really should be.
Yeah, in that one particular issue about submit application, fees, print forms, conduct training to provide public scale service at the transfer station. We don't need that. Hambros is doing a great job. It doesn't need to be on here at this point in time. It's nothing that we're working towards. I just don't think it needs to be on there at all. And I thought that we had taken it out at a prior meeting, according to my notes. The scale, remember? Is that ringing a bell? Yeah.
There's a similar item at the end of item 2, and it's just a matter of placeholders for these kinds of activities. For instance, we do have to conduct an aerial survey every 5 years, and the next time that's due is in 2016. So part of how we keep a placeholder of reminding ourselves that in 2016 we really better do that is even though we're not doing it this year, it's still on the list. That's part of the idea.
when we separate it out and say manage.
Absolutely, we can separate it out.
But I think it should remain there. So we don't know who will be employed in 5 years, so they need to have some kind of something to go by when it comes to our mandated responsibilities.
Well, just, honestly, for a work plan for 2014-15, I don't know. I would just, that's what the whole thing is for. It's the work plan for 2014-15, so I just don't see the need to have 5-year things on here this year if we're not working towards them at this point in time. It just simplifies things. It's easier to follow.
Because they aren't I mean, if we take the letter of what the title is, it's not a work priority for fiscal year 14-15. We need to add another page that says future work activities or future mandated stuff. Let's
Plan.
do that. But this is this year's work priority, and that's not a work priority for this year.
So I'm hearing very clearly, no one is quibbling with the actual titles, but you want it more localized in terms of immediate future, I should say, that you want something that's a year ahead, something rather than something that's far out 5 years down the road. Is that what I'm hearing?
Like a strategic plan that just has, a 5-year, every 5-year strategic plan, and then the work plan for this year is just what's on this year, and then you have your other pages for your strategic plan.
All right, any other board comments? I'll open it up to the public for discussion on item 6.1. Is there anyone in the audience who cares to discuss the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority work plan for 2014-2015? Mr. Lonsdale, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Bill Lonsdale. I live in Crescent City. And I think that the idea of having placeholders for types of activity is important. The organization of it, of course, is open for discussion. But if you take items out of a plan that you all or your predecessors have approved, there's a good possibility that something's going to fall through the crack. If a particular item is going to be pulled from the work plan, my sense is that that probably requires not one commissioner saying we don't need it, but rather a vote of the board.
Sure.
With all due respect, Mr. Wilson, thank you.
Point taken. Any other public comments at this time? Seeing no more additional public comments, I will close that public comments and bring it back to the board for action on 6.1.
If it pleases the board, I would be happy to make the revisions based on this discussion and bring it back to the next meeting.
Consensus on the board?
Yeah. Also, I think if we peel out I mean, we have to vote on it. What I'll do, Ted, is email you a reformat of this according to a simpler plan that won't necessarily take things out, but it will reposition it so it makes sense, because one of the things here is the, where is it? Yeah, activity completed for fiscal year 13-14, that should just be on a separate sheet. We already did this, it's done. If it's an ongoing activity, it's going to be under mandated ongoing activities, or it's going to be under our want list of things we want to provide, or it's going to be on our future wish list that when staffing or money becomes available, this are items that we would pursue. But I'd like to make this a lot better format.
All right, what I'm hearing clearly from this board is you'd like to see the process streamlined and not so verbose, wordy, and seems to be confusing. The legend seems to be confusing. So you want to reformat this and more in line of prioritizing what needs to be taken care of in a timely manner first, rather than worrying about things that are years down the road. And I appreciate your comments, Mr. Lonsdale, about not having anything fall through the cracks. I think perhaps it may be done in a different font, if that can work. You might have a certain font for.
Do you have a preferred font?
Well, I'm only saying this is that when it sticks out, a certain font comes out, this is priority, and then another font is maybe secondary. I'm just a suggestion. But we wanted to have it streamlined. So let's bring it back to the next board, and we'll leave that to your analysis and good thinking on how we can kind of streamline this process. So no additional comments. We'll move on. 6.1 to 6.2. Now, this is a discussion and possible action regarding the content of the final R3 report, and in this particular case, not limited to developing elements of a strategic plan for short, medium, and long-term goals, and possibly setting a future meeting date or dates for such planning. Now, obviously, this comes in the shadow of our recent workshop at the firehouse on options, and I want to bring this to the board's attention if they wish to pursue another workshop on another aspect of the R3 report and to get feedback from our board members. So, colleagues, what is your mindset to having another go ahead, report, another workshop? Go ahead.
Since our meeting at the fire hall, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think it's important for us as a board to show some successes, show some movement forward. We've been doing important discussion, but we really haven't created the foundation we need to create. So I think we need to pull back just a little bit, and I've been anxious to move forward quickly. But we do need to discuss the mission, the first phases of a strategic plan, I think.
Well, hold on a second, not to interrupt you, that's the next agenda item on the mission, 6.3, so
Okay.
let me back off a little bit. I want to be specific to the R3 report in general, and Ted, what I'd like to do is have this item, 6.2, institutionalized for future agendae, that we are discussing this as an ongoing practice for the foreseeable future. Now, the content may change. Here, we're talking about short, medium, and long-term goals. There are other aspects of the R3 report that we've yet to discuss. So the mission will be part of that, and that's 6.3 we're going to deal with next.
We're going to table that item until we at least get mission statements.
All right, any other comments from our colleagues? Commissioner Wilson on 6.2.
You said you wanted to table it, Mike?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about mission statement today.
that's coming up right after.
Yeah, that seemed to me that would be the thing that we would talk about first.
So we have a consensus at this point, 6.2, there's nothing to discuss, so therefore we will not go into public comments at this point. We'll take no action and agendize it for the next meeting. Now, 6.3, discussion and possible action regarding the content and process for adopting a mission statement or other elements of a strategic plan for the Solid Waste Management Authority. Ted?
So in your agenda packet is a staff report that again reviews the components of a strategic plan, the vision, mission, and values from the City of Crescent City, the mission and goals from the County of Del Norte, the purposes of the Solid Waste Authority, and the mission statements that were presented by Commissioner Wilson. Staff recommendation is that the Authority Board direct staff to research and make presentation at the regular November Authority meeting to discuss what grants or other resources could be available to reduce the expense of strategic planning efforts, which additional elements of a strategic plan should be considered and possibly adopted by the Authority, how such elements could be drafted, reviewed, adopted, and how contractor services would be defined and appropriate contractors selected and compensated. What I heard fairly clearly from Mr. Sapahan at the August 21st meeting was that the strategic planning process would likely take some time. The other thing I'm aware of, and this is the reason why I'm suggesting that some additional research be done, is that I know that the Humboldt Area Foundation helps nonprofits with strategic planning, and I wonder if some of those resources might be available to the Solid Waste Authority to possibly reduce the expenses of doing this. And I have not had time or direction to investigate those opportunities, but because I have heard pretty clearly from board members concern about the potential expense of doing this kind of planning, I thought I might investigate opportunities to reduce that expense. Also, it's not entirely clear, based on board discussion, as to which elements of a strategic plan the board is intending to develop. Of course, we'll be discussing the mission statements, and I appreciate Commissioner Wilson's efforts in that regard. But for instance, is there going to be a vision statement? Are there values that are going to be specific? How does this relate to the purposes? How does this relate to the work plan? All of those seem to be very relevant questions, And if there's going to be a contractor hired to help the authority board with this process, then we can reduce those expenses by being very specific about the services that we're requesting. If we're not very specific, then those costs can perhaps be unnecessarily high. Finally, there are a number of contractors in the region who do strategic planning, and so again, it's worthwhile to spend the time and effort to figure out exactly what the board wants before looking to procure services along those lines.
Commissioners, comments? And as I'm asking this, as I'm looking for examples, I don't see it in the narrative, Ted. The examples of different mission statements.
That's at the end, and it's highlighted under
Okay.
specifically, it says
Thank you.
possible mission statements submitted by Commissioner Wilson.
Okay.
Those are strictly the ones submitted by Commissioner Wilson. I did not have time to, and nor did I receive any input from board members as to which mission statements seemed most attractive to board members, so I made no efforts to try to present anything else.
Understood. Commissioners, comments on mission statement?
Well, I believe at the end of our workshop that where we came to was an agreement that we would move forward with a mission statement at that time and not necessarily a strategic plan. I know the staff report is calling for a strategic plan. In fact, I was a bit distraught with Mr. Supahan, in that we had specifically, right before the meeting, we had been flagged, all the commissioners had a very important email that came prior to the meeting, and I'd like to read it to you real quickly. And this is from the principal, William Schoen, from the R3 Consulting Group, and this is his statement. It says, options presented in our report were based on our assessment of the authority's current staffing and roles and responsibilities as discussed below. The specifics of the options are not, he's got that bolded and underlined, are not dependent on the authority completing a strategic planning process. The strategic planning process, as suggested, is simply intended to clarify the role the authority is to be going forward with. So again, the strategic planning process is something larger, and I know within the first 5 minutes of the meeting that we had, Mr. Supahan talked about the strategic planning process, and where we had just received this email that was not necessary to put that in place prior to the board moving ahead with the R3 report. So that was my understanding at the meeting, is that though we did decide that it is wise to have a mission statement, so that right now, you know, the board is not at odds with our director, or, you know, we just put down what our mission is, and then we use that to move forward with possibly choosing an R3 option. And that, again, if you clearly read the R3 report, it states that any of the options are not, again, he's got this underlined and bolded, not dependent on the authority completing a strategic planning process. So that would just push it out further and further. So I'd like to, as they suggest, you know, look at the R3 report for what it is and the options that are in it. And then I know Mr. Gastineau, and we had kind of agreed that coming up with a mission statement at this time, though, would be a wise thing to do.
Commissioners, additional comments on the mission statement?
Well, I see one of the mission statements here that Commissioner Wilson put forward, and it's short, sweet, and I think it gets to the point here.
Which number is that?
It's number 2. The authority's mission is the management of Del Norte County's solid waste and recyclable materials in an environmentally sound, cost-effective, efficient, and safe manner.
Okay. Are you preferable to selecting that as the mission statement? Is that what your position is?
That's my personal preference for this. It basically says exactly what I think a lot of the board here wants it to be. Doesn't go into any other details of what we're doing, or, you know, one of them doing. And And me and Commissioner Sullivan had talked about, the 3 columns of this is what's mandatory, this is what we want to do, and this is our wish list. And as we go through this process, those are the things that we really have to look at, and what the Solid Waste Management Authority, not the, garbage collectors or recyclers or anything like that, or Hambro, is what the authority needs to do and how to manage the solid waste in Del Norte County. Those are the things, the 3 things we have to look at. And definitely we want to do everything that is required. And then we want to look at, hey, maybe this is something that we want, like the disposal of the marine flares. That is something our community might need, possibly really does need. And then we look into the wish list. And as these priorities came up, we sit there and see, is this something we want to do? And we look for guidance and policy coming from the board. So, I mean, that's...
Okay, so
that's
your
the
preference
process.
is to, before we go to the public on this, I want to get some input from the other commissioners on any other preferences other than 2, or 2, to include that. So Commissioner Wilson, you look like you have something you want to contribute on this?
Well, again, these really were all from different authorities around the state of California, except for number 1, that I kind of liked and put forward. And number 1 is something, it says the mission of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority is to provide the most economical way for the ratepayers and the JPA members to manage the waste resource streams and still be in compliance with state law. So, I know you like 2, but I just, as far as saying that it's in compliance with state law, I thought that that kind of, once we're in, whatever programs that the state puts forward, be it the percentage of recycling material or whatever it would be, of course, we're going to need to follow those. And so I thought that it would be good to have that in the mission statement. And the other one, I did want to read number 5, because I know Mr. Lonsdale had looked at these last time, and if I can read number 5 out, I also like that one. It says, to ensure the safety of the public we serve, to ensure 100% regulatory compliance with existing law, and to, where economically viable, maximize the reduction, reuse, and recycling of solid waste in Del Norte County while providing excellent customer service at an affordable price. So that one also had a nice ring in my ear. I like that one. So those 3 were my number 2 too. It's short and sweet, but those 3.
Commissioners Holly or Sullivan, comments on any of the mission statement before we open to public?
Well, if we did do number 2, I think we have to pull part of 5 in with it because it is missing that. If we went with 2, I'd want to pull the section from number 5 that says ensuring 100% regulatory compliance with existing law. So it would, the authority's mission is the management of Del Norte County solid waste and recyclable material in an environmentally sound, cost-effective, efficient, and safe manner while ensuring 100% regulatory compliance with existing law.
So you want to expand 5?
Well, I would just
Expand
take
2.
part of 5
Expand
and
2.
add it to 2.
Okay. Expand 2 or expand 5 or delete? I get
No,
it.
I
Okay.
would expand 2 with the section from 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Holly, comments?
I agree. I think number 2 with that change would be good. I don't know if we want to say existing law. I mean, there's law and...
Just say
law.
take existing out.
Yeah, that seems to be
And I would think that,
redundant.
that's implied that we do
Exist.
follow the law, so.
Non-existent laws.
So we're talking about deleting the word existing.
Okay.
And that kind of makes sense to go from there. Okay, so let's open it up to the public.
If I might,
Sure.
just a couple quick questions, since there seems to be some movement towards 2. The additional things that the board may consider are, we also have responsibilities for composting. We also have responsibilities for household hazardous waste. And neither of those things are currently mentioned.
Isn't that covered under solid waste?
Household hazardous waste is not actually solid waste.
Okay, but we're called the Solid Waste Authority, so it does.
That's correct, and we would still have the same responsibilities.
I think we're parsing words here. I want to make this simple and understandable without becoming Harvard attorneys on this thing. and I appreciate the fact that we want to get as much in. I'd like to hear from the public, those who wish to opine on any of these options, so that we can coalesce an option which makes sense and covers our mission. So, Mr. Lonsdale, thank you for approaching, and anyone else in the audience who wishes to give us their opinion on this, well, greatly welcomed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. I want to commend the staff for including in this agenda package all of the things that were not provided to the public at the workshop. The email from Mr. Schoen, Commissioner Wilson's nominations for potential mission statements, and a wonderful job of capturing all of that stuff that was up on the whiteboards. It's remarkable. I want to thank Commissioner Wilson for having gone to the trouble of digging out all of those mission statements. It provided a lot of grist for the mill. And I'd like to repeat the suggestion that I made that Commissioner Wilson referred to, but my suggestion was to combine number 3 and number 5, only because the combination of those two comes closest to the purposes in the JPA agreement. I like the idea of number 2, which is open to the widest possible interpretation, and will create all kinds of interesting future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. Is there anyone else who wishes to give us an opinion on any of the mission statements? Mr. Lonsdale is in support of, I guess, merging 3 and 5, which would be a rather long one. Not to say we won't, but I think we want to get this covered, so please come up and identify yourself.
I'm Patricia Black City, and just to throw it out there, I think too, as adjusted, maybe throwing in the hazardous waste would be a perfect solution, so thank you.
Okay, any additional public comments? Seeing none, we'll close that. So let's see what we have here. I think we have a consensus. I kind of liked 4 for some reason, but I'm not going to put too many cooks spoil the brew, so to speak. But I'm perfectly fine with the merging of 2 and 5. So what I think this mission statement will read, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is the authority's mission is management of Del Norte County solid waste and recyclable material in an environmentally sound, cost-efficient, and safe manner, and then picking up to ensure the safety of the public we serve, to ensure 100% regulatory compliance with law, and where economically viable, maximize the reduction, reuse, and recycling in solid waste in Del Norte County. And,
Whoa.
okay, sorry.
No, I only took the phrase to
Okay.
ensure 100% regulatory compliance with law.
Okay, with law. So it's period
that's-
after
that's
that.
period.
Okay, so let me do that.
And it's cost-effective, efficient, and safe
Okay,
manner, not
so let me read this
cost-efficient.
again, and I'll ask, it gets a little confusing as we're reading this, and ask if we wish to add in there, and I don't know if we need to, the additional of composting. So let's read this again. The authority's mission is the management of Del Norte County solid waste and recyclable material in environmentally sound, cost-efficient, and then comma, efficient and safe manner to ensure the safety of the public we serve.
No.
Okay, where are we putting that, where are we
We're
adding
only
this?
taking one phrase in the center of 5 out that starts with to ensure 100% regulatory compliance with existing law. We're scratching existing. That's it from 5.
Okay, so
Nothing else.
pick it up, and so I'm looking at this and I'm getting a little
Why
confused.
don't I read it?
Where?
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
You're
The
up.
authority's mission is the management of Del Norte County's solid waste and recyclable material in an environmentally sound, cost-effective, efficient, and safe manner while ensuring 100% regulatory compliance with law.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Oh, is there? Okay, let's see, and then material as opposed to waste resource streams, let's see, recyclable, waste resource streams. Does that open it up a little bit more broadly? Waste resource streams in there where the word
Yeah, instead of just
material-
solid waste, you have waste resource stream. Ted? Would
Solid
that,
waste
would that
and
cover,
recyclable
what would be a term to cover everything that would? Yeah, solid and hazardous waste.
Okay.
And
It's got-
recyclable
It
material.
seems like solid waste is going to cover even recycling material. in
None of
many
the other
ways.
counties have that in there. I don't know why, but, you know, these are from all the other areas, so they didn't specifically call it out for some reason.
And you know, this is a mission statement that's pretty broad in general.
I think Mr. Lonsdale pointed it out correctly. that
Yes.
It's vague enough it can
And it's
encompass
almost
hazardous.
all inclusive for what we have, so.
I don't anticipate it being any barrier if we don't include hazardous waste or compost.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. One more time, Mr. Sullivan, if you'd read, Commissioner Sullivan, if you'd read that again, and then
You
we'll
want me to
call the
read it
question.
again, folks?
I do, so our clerk gets this.
Wilma, did you get that? I did not get it. Oh, okay. Okay, so, all right, here we go. The authority's mission is the management of Del Norte County solid waste and recyclable material in an environmentally sound, cost-effective, efficient, and safe manner, while ensuring 100% regulatory compliance with law.
Yes, we have that? Okay. Let's call the question. We will call the question.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, that is our mission statement, so adopted. I didn't know if it's going to be this easy. All right, we are at, let's go through this, at 6.5, discussion and possible approval of a budget transfer for fiscal year 13-14 in the amount of $70,000 or less. And Ted, I think our narrative was not ready at this time.
I don't have a narrative, but I do have a budget transfer. I put that in front of each of you, and as has happened in the last meeting, I did put a placeholder amount that we thought we would not exceed, and in fact, this budget transfer is not for $70,000, it's for $8,170.
Okay, so this is
considerably
not
less.
70,000, this is, give me that number, 8,000?
$8,170.
Okay.
And similar to last time, it is shuffling between budget lines to balance out the fiscal year. And with this shuffling, there's still a deficit of nearly $15,000.
Okay, public comments on this time? Seeing none, we'll move back and close public comments. Move back to the board. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, call the question. The amount is $8,170.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes?
Chair Gitlin?
Yes. All right, let's see if we can, we're kind of hodgepodging getting this through. We'll go back to 3.1. Yes, go
I will
ahead.
be extremely fast on this. This is a regular semi-annual report we have to submit regarding the landfill, and it has already been submitted, so it's been included in the board packet for the board's information. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I just had one thing on there. I noticed during the administering of grants on the page 2 that it had mentioned and beverage container and recycling, and I thought that that grant did not move forward this year.
You're correct. We're still finishing out the previous year's grant.
Just us.
All right, so this is simply acknowledging this report and filing it? Okay, no, so we can go right back to the board on this. So acknowledged. Do we have a consensus? We're acknowledging this, okay. Move on from 3.1. 4.1, discussion, possible action regarding the status and allocation of authority-directed pull bins, directed bins for 2014. I think you're going to give us a census count, Ted, on
Yes.
numerator, denominator.
Essentially, there are 4 bins left per the authority's direction if we keep consistent with the allocation of bins in years prior. So for instance, coming up in September, we have the annual coastal cleanup, And historically, the board has supported that effort with 6 authority-directed bin pulls to support the coastal cleanup. So staff recommendation is that we continue that authorization of the 6 authority-directed bin pulls in support of the September coastal cleanup, with bin size and location to be coordinated with Recology Del Norte. To authorize 1 authority-directed bin pull to be used as part of the annual hazardous waste collection event on October 3rd and 4th. Again, we've done that in years prior. To request that Hambro WSG agree to waive their service fees for disposing of materials in the bins associated with both the beach cleanup and the hazardous waste event, and to provide further direction to staff as to the allocation of the remaining authority-directed bin pulls in 2014. I also thought that she would be here, but I was contacted by Patricia Abbey, who's associated with the first annual celebration of people with alternate abilities, Disability Day, I think they're calling it. Anyway, she was asking if that would be possible to get a bin donated. I said, you need to come to the meeting and discuss this at the...
I don't see Patty
I don't
Abbey
see
here.
her, but I said I would relay the information.
I did see her at the authority offices the other day. She stopped me and said hello to me, but was that what this was about?
That's what it was about.
Okay. Well, my question to you on this about remaining bins, does this include Sea Cruise Car Show and the demand? I think they indicated that we've not responded to them. I attended a Sea Cruise car meeting, and the group said that we had not responded to them about any requests. Do you have a request from Sea Cruise?
Yes, and it's news to me, sorry about that. But yes, we received a request, and I had not gotten back to them because the board has not yet officially approved that bin.
Okay, it's not on the agenda here.
So, well, actually, maybe I'm wrong about that. We may have.
I seem to remember we have approved this.
I think we may have approved it, and perhaps I dropped the ball.
All right. Under these exigent circumstances, not being an agendized item, I'm going to ask if we can reconfirm that approval, which I'm 100% certain.
Happy to do that.
Okay. Okay. So, how many have they asked for? Go ahead. Hold on a second, Ted. Commissioner Wilson, go ahead.
Oh, it says right here within his analysis that Sea Cruise has 1 bin allocated.
Okay, so now does that take away from the 4 that are left? Okay, so we have 4 that are left. All right, so based on that, do we have a consensus that we can move forward with this? And I'll open it up to the public now at this point, but go ahead, Commissioner Hall.
I don't know what the timing should be, and maybe this is something for another time, but I know that the city will be asking for a bin for further cleanup behind Safeway. We have to go in and take care of that again. And I know that one was provided last year, and we have that need again this year.
And again, to come in on the city comment on that, Commissioner Hawley, I know for a fact that I've been told by city people that you're going to need some help on the cleanup of that Front Street restaurant. Yeah, which I'm going to presume is going to happen this year. And if you do, you'll need a bin or 2.
Or 10.
So, yeah, looking at that. So with that in mind, please, if you can, Mayor Hawley, I'll approach you as Mayor Hawley now, to find out if we can get those requests in to us in a timely way.
Very good. So
Okay.
I will get Mr. Palazzo to make a formal request.
Okay, any public comment on the bin allocations? Seeing none, we'll move on, or we'll bring it back to the board. And my only other question is, we're moving down that list. This will come down to, I'm of the opinion I would like to have these bins and the 20 that are allocated to us each year exhausted. In other words, we utilize them all. We came down to last year and we had 1 left, and in the rain we ended up doing a Union Street cleanup in the rain. And I'm hoping that we can maybe settle these things up before the rainy season, if we're going to have one this year, is going to effectuate, so that we use these up. All intents and purposes, December is not a productive month to work anyway with the holidays and the rainy season. So by next meeting, I'd like you to put this back on the agenda to see if we can utilize additional bin allocations for November also, so that we use them all in a timely way. Any other discussion on that? So we'll take, I think enough is a consensus. We have a consensus to move forward on the bin allocations as presented in the report. Or do we need a motion, council? We need a motion on 4.1, or is it consensus?
Yeah, should have a motion.
Okay. Do I have a motion regarding the status and allocation of bin-directed authorities per Ted Ward's report?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and second. Any more additional board comments? Okay, let's call the vote on 4.1.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Chair Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, let's move on to 5.2.
Clarification, if I might?
Sure.
Mr. Wallen, Joel, is Hambro willing to waive the fees on the coastal cleanup bins and the hazardous waste bin?
Joel Allenhammer, WSG. Right now, I don't really want to answer that question, but I did want to remind the board that when these bins were, and I can't speak for Mr. Sparrow, but in their contracts, they would have looked at these 20 bins over each year of their contract and added them into the cost and spread that out over the term. So what it wasn't in our contract was the disposal of these bins. So when we get one of these bins, we have to pay for it right out of our pocket in order to do that. It was never allocated by us to figure out how to pay for this. So I just want to remind everyone of that. I don't see them being a problem. The Safeway cleanup, that kind of concerns me a little bit. You know, it's not like for charity or anything, that's just like community cleanup. So again, I don't want to be negative. I just want to remind everyone that it does come right out of our pocket when we donate that disposal.
Well, let's put this on the agenda for the next meeting, which is going to be in October, and to see if we can get some clarity. I'm of the position, Joel, that if we have 20 bins, I'd like to utilize them all and not squander them at the end of the year, which often happens, and of course, during the rainy season. But I'd like to use them, and of course, with that, as the greater good to the community, dispose of the waste that's in there. So not only are the bins provided, but the transportation and the actual closure, moving of that trash into the landfill in White City would be part of the overall package. Now, if that's a hardship, then we need to hear that at the next meeting.
That'd be absolutely fine. I don't believe so, and we are a partner with the authority, so I don't see it being a problem.
Well, when you go back and you talk with management, and I'll say this also to Tommy at Recology, my mindset is, and I hope we continue to do that, is we utilize all 20 of these bins and we don't squander any of them at the end of the year, because any trash that we take out and remove from the area is going to be less trash that we have to look at.
The original intention is to add them into Mr. Sparrow's contract was to provide that bin, to provide that transportation of that bin to the transfer station, but it was never discussed on who paid for it once it got there.
We'll so get some clarification, and we'll do the fair and right thing, no question about it. Thank you.
And I'd just like to remind everyone that a priority was the community cleanup. I believe when we set those priorities for those bin allocations, we talked about that being a high priority.
The third page of the staff report is the criteria and policy for the allocation of these bins.
I'm all for this. I don't think anyone's arguing with this. I think we need to just do the fair and right thing. Anything that creates a greater good for the community in removing of trash, I hang my hat on Blight, as you know. I'm going to support 100%. It does come down to dollars and cents. And I appreciate Commissioner Wilson's comments. It's something that's not called for in a contract. We need to be reminded of that. And then we need to move toward the model that we are cleaning up our community to the best of our ability. Okay, so let's move on from there. That is not, I'm sorry, we need to take a vote on it. We have a motion and a second. Let's call the question.
Yes.
Do we get that? I'm sorry. Move on from, so that is 5.4, that's 4.1. 5.2, discussion, possible action regarding upcoming hazardous waste collection event, which is October 3rd and 4th at the transfer station. Ted?
Yeah, information in your packet, but bottom line is this is an annual event. This is our one day of the year that we accept all of the hazardous materials that are not explosive, not controlled substances, not radioactive, that we don't accept every day at the transfer station. Since the last year, however, that we have expanded our paint recycling program, so we now take all non-aerosol, water-based, oil-based stains, varnishes, lacquers, and paints. And that's relatively new, and that's a material that was fairly expensive, and people can now bring in every day. So, bottom line is, our household hazardous waste event is October 4th at the transfer station from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. And if you're a commercial business and you have hazardous materials to dispose, there is information available by calling 465-1100. We'll tell you exactly what needs to happen. But bottom line is, you need an EPA ID number. You need to call for an appointment. They will give you a cost estimate of how much it will cost to dispose of the materials that you have, and then you need to come to your appointment on Friday, October 3rd, and then pay the cost at that time. One example of how this cannot work out very well, one year we did have a truck from the Yurok tribe that was a pickup truck that was entirely filled with paint cans during the years that was one of the main materials that we accepted, and unfortunately they came on Saturday. And so at that point, all we could do was turn them away because it was clearly a commercial waste, and we couldn't take it during our household hazardous waste day. So one of our requirements is we need to separate the commercial and residential waste, and the reason why I'm dragging everybody through this explanation is we're happy to have Del Norte County residents come on our free day of October 4th, but if you're a business, you really need to come on October 3rd.
What is the action that we'll need to do here?
There is no action. This is a status report.
Okay.
Will the cost go down then for this, since we won't be having to take the paint in, as that's now part of another program? Will it become cheaper?
Yes. Last year, we saved about $6,000 just from the paint. And furthermore, the Paint Care Recycling Program, in addition to servicing the paint that we have on a regular basis, they also are partners with Clean Harbors, who is our hazardous waste contractor. So the paints that we are receiving during our household hazardous waste event are also go through the Paint Care program.
So the cost should go down?
It does reduce our cost, yes.
Okay, so that will be handled efficiently. And Ted, what are your efforts in marketing this and getting this out?
You'll see newspaper ads in the triplicate. There are radio ads that will be running on KCRE and KPOD, and there will be also radio ads for the first time on KFUG.
Okay, not sure. No, we're not doing any direct mailing our clients?
No, I have blasted out an email to other department heads to try to encourage them, and the city as well, to encourage them to let their various departments know, because I do regularly hear from folks afterwards saying, oh, I just missed it, if you'd only told me. So, trying to tell everybody as best we can.
Okay, so we'll move on from there, and we'll go right into your director's report. We will not have a treasurer's report today because we do not have Mr. Taylor with us. So 8.1, acting director's report.
Okay, I'll try to be as quick as I can with this. Stop me if you have any questions. Did present a summary of activities from the last month, presented a composting workshop. I want to let everybody know that our carpet recycling program has expanded. We're now taking carpet padding in addition to carpeting. You need to keep the padding separate from the carpet and roll them both up, but now you can roll the carpet either fiber side in or fiber side out. You still get the price break, so it's about a third of the price of trash and definitely worth doing. I escorted Gina Morrison and Brian McNally on an inspection of the Crescent City landfill on the 14th of August, not March. I did make arrangements for the special authority meeting, and attached to the staff report are the written comments Mr. Lonsdale discussed, because I wanted to make sure that those were incorporated into the record one way or another. So they are attached to the staff report. I completed the electronic annual report, which Mr. Miles was referring to as we're discussing that through the task force. I also completed an oil grant report to Cal Recycle that was a little bit overdue. And we've begun the constituent of concern monitoring, working with the county, a very comprehensive suite of tests we're doing out at the landfill. Under personnel and staffing, I need to let you know Lori Paulson no longer works for the Solid Waste Authority. We tried out a new account clerk, didn't quite work out. We did have a surprise cash count on the 9th of September, and once again, we're down to the penny. So that should offer the board some additional reassurance that our internal fiscal controls and the efforts of our accounting staff, including Lisa Babcock, are all seem to be working very well. Major activities before our next meeting. We have been coordinating with the county auditor regarding a list of bad checks and bad debts. It's a fairly short list, but essentially we have about 6 or 7 accounts we're going to be referring to collections. Also coming up this month, of course, is the hazardous waste collection event, and on October 1st, our Form 303 is due, which summarizes the hazardous waste processing that we've been doing in the past year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I think at this point, that's 8.1. I'd like you to go through the entire, since we don't have Mr. Taylor here.
Sure.
The other items, and then I'll open it up to questions
That's
on
fine.
any of these, so if that's all right with commissioners.
So under 8.2, the balance sheet, this is the first month of the fiscal year, and some of those adjusting entries are part of what makes that first page a little bit confusing. We did, looking at the statement of revenues and expenditures, we did use a little bit extra of the overtime during the last few weeks, as, like I said, Lori Paulson is no longer working with us, and it is the close of the fiscal year, so that took some extra efforts. Let's see, bottom line is that we had $47,281 in revenue in excess of our expenses for the past month, and our cash balance is $609,991. Looking at item 8.3, pretty standard claims approved by director. I will point out that the Bush Geotechnical Services was approved at a prior board meeting, and that bill was fairly overdue as it was approved back in June. The cash reports from the last month. Generally, we are quite ahead in terms of our authority service fees compared to our projections, and we're a little bit behind in terms of our franchise fee revenues. But we're way more ahead in our transfer station revenues than we are behind in the franchise revenues. Regarding the AR aging summary, one page back, we are making progress on the Redwood National Park invoices. We did have an 11,000 outstanding. It's down to 3,000, and part of that is dealing with the multiple changes they've had to their computer programs, but we're now trying to settle out issues, as I understand, were fiscal years 11-12, so quite old. The other oldest, largest accounts include Layman Services and Your Creation, and those are some of the accounts we're looking to refer to collections. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? No questions. All right, so that will move us to adjournment at 6:12. So we will adjourn the meeting this time, and we will adjourn to October 14th or 15th, whichever time the room is available. Commissioners, please mark your calendars accordingly. We are adjourned.